A night call always means one thing: trouble. The phone rang at 2 a.m., and when I picked it up, I heard the tense voice of Captain Reed. "Maxfer, we have a murder. The Graves Mansion. It's a strange case. Get over here." The Graves family was a household name. Nicholas Graves was a prominent financier, a man of influence, but not, as usual, not the cleanest. When a man makes a fortune, he has as many enemies as money. I left at once. The night road was deserted, with only the street lamps casting a dim glow on the rain-wet asphalt. When I reached the mansion, its massive gates were already open, and police cars were parked on the porch. Silhouettes of men moved behind the curtain windows. "Glad to see you on such short notice, Maxfer." Captain Reed met me at the door. He looked tired, his eyes red, and in his hand, a notebook in his hand. "The case is murky. You'll see for yourself." Inside smelled of expensive wood and stale air. The house was too big and too quiet. We went up the stairs to the master bedroom. Nicholas Graves was lying on the bed. His head was thrown back, his eyes open, as if he had not had time to realize what was happening. The shadow of a half-smile lingered on his lips. "Why did he die?" I asked, scrutinizing the room. "Preliminarily from a heart attack," but Reed paused. "There are some things that don't add up." I looked around. There was order in the room, but it seemed too perfect. There was a glass of water on the nightstand, and an unopened book next to it. It looked as if the victim had just fallen asleep and never woke up again. But experience had taught me that perfect murder scenes are always the most fake. I walked around the room, noting every detail. The bed was neatly made except for the part where the body lay. There were no signs of a struggle on the floor, but something still didn't seem right. "Where was the body found?" I asked. "That's how they found it. Like he just fell asleep and didn't wake up," Reed replied, shaking his head. I took a seat next to the bed, looking at the night table. A glass of water. A clock showing 10 p.m. sharp. A notebook lying perfectly flat. And that's when I noticed there was something white between the bed and the nightstand. "Give me the gloves," I said, not taking my eyes off the find. Reed handed me the package, and pulling the latex on, I carefully pulled out a small folded piece of paper. Unfolding it, I saw illegible handwriting written in haste. "He's here. I know who it is." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What is it?" Reed asked, peering over my shoulder. "It means that Nicholas knew his killer," I said quietly. The memo turned everything upside down. Now it no longer looked like an accident. The victim had managed to write something before she died, but why hadn't she tried to run away or call the police? I looked at Reed. "Who found the body first?" "The housekeeper, Linda Carter. She comes in this morning to make breakfast. Says she walked into the bedroom and called the police right away." "Where is she now?" "Downstairs in the living room, waiting to be questioned." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Time to talk to her. Linda Carter appeared to be a woman in her 50s, with a tired face and trembling hands. She was sitting on the couch, clutching a handkerchief in her fingers. "Linda, tell me what happened this morning," I began calmly. "I came in as usual. About 7 o'clock in the morning. Went up to wake Mr. Graves, but she sobbed. He was already dead." "Who was in the house last night?" "No one, sir. Just him. I left around 8 p.m. Did he have any enemies? Maybe he'd been fighting with someone lately? She hesitated, then nodded. There was one person. He came by a few days ago. But I don't know who it was. I looked at Reed. It could be our killer. And now he had to be found. The name of the unknown guest could have been a clue. I turned on the recorder and continued the interrogation. Linda, describe this person. She frowned, remembering. Tall. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Wearing an expensive suit, but looked nervous. They talked for a long time, and then Mr. Graves told me never to let him in the house again. Did he yell? Threatened? Linda shook her head. No, but there was something ominous in his voice. I wondered. The stranger was clearly someone important. If Nicholas Graves was forbidding him to come, then they had a conflict. Do you have security cameras? I asked, turning to Captain Reed. Not in the house, but at the gate. We're already checking the footage. Good. Good. What about family members? Who else would have a motive? Graves has a son, Michael. He's the heir to the business, but his father recently put him out of business. Guy's been living abroad, but he came back a few days ago. I felt the puzzle starting to come together. The man in the suit, the conflict with the son, the note hinting at the killer. We need to talk to Michael, I said, standing up. Reed nodded and pulled out his cell phone. They'd already called him down to the station. He'd be here soon. I glanced at the stairs leading back to the bedroom. But first I needed to take another look at the crime scene. I returned to Nicholas Graves' bedroom, taking in every detail. Now knowing he knew the killer, I looked for signs of a struggle, signs of another person's presence. The bed looked as if no one had moved on it. The note was hidden too well, meaning he didn't want it found right away. But what bothered me most was the clock. I remembered that it showed 10 p.m. sharp. That could mean that the murder had taken place at that time. But there was one thing. I walked over to the nightlight, picked it up and turned it on. The lamp lit up. The clock should have stopped if the power was turned off in the room, I muttered. If the killer had deliberately stopped the clock, he was trying to adjust the time of death. But why? I stepped out into the hallway and called Reed over. We need forensics on that clock. If the mechanism was stopped manually, the killer wanted to confuse us. Reed nodded. Already on the phone with forensics. In the meantime, Michael Graves is here. Time to find out what the victim's son is hiding. Michael Graves walked into the precinct office with the look of a man who is unbearably bored by it all. Young, stylish, wearing an expensive coat and a dismissive smile. Do you want to blame me for your father's death? He asked, sitting down across from me. For now, I just want to understand what your relationship was like, I replied. He chuckled. We had disagreements. Like what? Michael paused for a moment, then said. He cut me out of his will. He didn't think I was worthy to carry on his work. I looked at him more closely. Where were you last night? At a bar. Downtown. Lots of witnesses. The alibi seemed solid. But there was one but. Your father had been seeing someone recently. A tall man in an expensive suit. Do you know who it was? Michael was suddenly tense. My father had mentioned that he was in trouble. Some people were trying to pressure him. What kind of people? I don't know. But I could see he was lying. I looked at Reed. All right, Michael. We'll check out your story. He stood up, still smiling. Check it out. I'm clean. But something told me he was hiding something. After talking to Michael, I got a strange feeling. He reacted too calmly to his father's death, and his smile seemed more of an act than a real emotion. I decided to check the surveillance footage at the mansion's gate. The police officer had already reviewed them, but found nothing suspicious. No one approached the house at 10 o'clock at night, he said. And before that? I asked. The officer hesitated. At 9:45, a silhouette appeared on the cameras. A man in a long coat, but he stood in the shadows, his face obscured. I cursed. Why am I only being told about this now? Because he didn't come in. He just stood looking at the house and then disappeared into the darkness. I looked at the screen. The man really wasn't approaching the mansion, but something about it didn't feel right. He was waiting, I muttered. But for what? A signal? Or an opportune moment? Reed came toward me, holding the papers. Forensics confirmed that the clock in the room had been stopped manually. The real time of death wasn't 10 p.m., but around 9:50. That changed everything. The killer had deliberately rigged the evidence to mislead us. I looked at the screen again. The silhouette had disappeared at 9:50. Literally at the moment of the murder. I returned to Graves' house with a clear plan, to examine the crime scene again. The note found under the bed continued to bother me. The victim clearly knew the killer, but if Graves realized he was going to be killed, why didn't he call for help? I went up to the bedroom again. The bed was neatly made, but I knew there was a secret underneath. I knelt down and shined my flashlight under the bed. There was no more note there, but there was another piece of paper pressed against the wooden frame. I pulled it out and unfolded it. If anything happens, look for him among your own. I froze. Among his own? That meant the killer was in the inner circle. Someone who was trusted. I stood up and met Reed's gaze. Request a list of everyone who had access to the house in the last 2 days. We need that person. Reed nodded and walked out, and I glanced out the window again. Something told me the truth was going to be more complicated than I'd realized. The answer came quicker than I expected. Among those who had come to Graves' house over the past 2 days was one person no one had accounted for. Linda. She was always there, always knew all the details. And most importantly, she was the one who found the body. I went back to the mansion and found her in the kitchen. Linda, tell me honestly. Did you know that Nicholas Graves feared for his life? She froze. What are you talking about? He left a note. He knew the killer. Her face turned pale. That's not true. Did you know the man who came to see him? She clenched her hands. I don't know. But I saw fear in her eyes. Who was he? I asked her sharply. And that's when she snapped. It was his business partner, Charles Wheatley. He'd come to threaten Mr. Graves. But I didn't think he... Why didn't you say so right away? She put her hands over her face. I was afraid. I stepped closer. Or you weren't just afraid. Did you help him cover his tracks? Linda burst into tears. He said if I helped, he'd let me live. What exactly did you do? She sobbed. I erased the marks on the floor. That's it. The evidence was gone, and with it, the perpetrator. But now I knew who I was looking for. We found Charles Wheatley in his house. He was packed, his suitcase already at the door. About time, Maxfier, he grinned. Going somewhere? Business. You killed Graves. He grinned. You have no proof. Linda told us everything. His face hardened. That fool. I got the handcuffs. And we have the prints we found on the door. You didn't erase everything. He didn't say a word. Are you going to keep playing or are you going to confess? Charles sighed. Graves knew too much. I just fixed it. Yes, but now it's up to you to fix it, I replied, snapping the cuffs on. The case was closed. But I knew one thing, the truth never goes away. Even if someone tries to erase it. If you like this story, support me by subscribing to the channel. I'm putting in the effort for you, and your subscription helps me grow. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, your opinion really matters to me.